Before jumping into the review, I would like to thank Arisa and Soratune for sending the unit for review. However, Soratune does not have any input on this review, and this review is 100% my own thoughts and experience with the YI01. I actually sent and gave some people a try of the YI01, and it seems like most of them are quite interested in them. Perhaps I should introduce the YI01 first before jumping to the review, as the YI01 is rather new IEM from a new brand. Soratune is a sister brand of Luxure and RT. Perhaps you have heard of them from some of the popular products they have, like the S12 Pro and the Galileo from Luxure, and the RT-T10 from RT, which I covered in the link video. The YI01 is their first ever IEM from this sister brand, a dual Dynamic Driver IEM that costs around $75 in the market. The Soratune YI01 is a rather nicely packaged IEM. Perhaps my biggest concern is that the foam that holds the YI01 isn't secure enough to hold them in place, as I've accidentally dropped them a few times. Included are two types of ear tips, a case, a cable, and the YI01 itself. The YI01 is available in two configurations, the 3.5 and USB-C DSP cable. The one I got here is the 3.5mm cable. Perhaps I wish that they have an option for 4.4 balance cable. Speaking about cables, the cable of the YI01 feels rather cheap in my opinion. It feels like it is slightly thin and slightly sharp on my hands. Perhaps they are just okay, but at this price point, I expect similar cable to their sister brands RT-T10 and the DZ4 from Luxure. But perhaps it is just a nitpick on my end, and I am quite picky about how everything feels on my hand. That being said, the cable is quite easy to wrap and quite nice to wrap. The Soratune YI01 design is somewhat open back, with a little bit of similarity to the Zero Red in a way. The design does remind me of Luxure SO8. Perhaps they share an overall geometry, and I personally quite like the color combination on both silver and black variant of the YI01. The design is quite sharp if you look closely at the IEM. Perhaps if you have a smaller ear or the body interacts way too much to your ears, the rather sharp design might be uncomfortable. But for that, the fitment of the YI01 for me is quite snug and secure. The fitment is definitely not semi-custom, and it is more towards a universal fit. Fitting them is quite easy compared to the Zero Red, which can be quite large and hard to fit, or the RT-T10, that is quite awkward. The YI01 is also quite comfortable to both wear and listen, as the sound signature is inoffensive and the fitment as mentioned is quite nice. But do keep this in mind, as your mileage will definitely vary in terms of fitment and perceived sound. Speaking about that, the YI01 is somewhat mid-centric and slightly bassy. Perhaps not as bassy as other bass head IEM or the T10. Let's talk about it. As mentioned, perhaps the bass isn't as much as the T10, but it is slightly more than the Zero Red. It has a quite nice balance of sub and mid bass. Enough to be fun and correct, but not quite enough to muddy up the lower mids. I personally think that this bass performance is quite nice for rock songs, older and newer rock songs. Perhaps for pop and hip hop songs, I would like a little more mid bass. But I think I'm just nitpicking, as the bass feels quite natural and pleasant overall. The mid-range of the YI01 is overall quite nice, although it seems like I do have one note on them. Perhaps they are not as thin as other IEMs like the T95 but they can get quite thin, 1 out of 10 times. Overall, the vocals sounds light-bodied and may suit certain tastes better than the others, although, on my end, I find them just right, as this way they can be perceived as versatile. As for positioning, the vocals are quite forward, but it still does have some distance, giving a sense of deep sound staging. The treble performance of the YI01 is quite interesting. Compared to the Zero Red, the YI01 is slightly brighter, giving a sense of cleaner, more energetic sound. The treble also brings out more of that sense of micro detail in the technical department. Perhaps not as much as the Ignite X Beast, but more than the Zero Red. I think the overall treble performance is quite natural. Not as dark as it could be, but not as bright to be annoying. I think the tuning may bring out more of that technicalities that I wish the Zero Red had. A little bit of detail and a little bit more separation. From the material provided by Soratune, it seems like the E01 is marketed as a gaming IEM. Perhaps I share a little bit of experience with the E01 in gaming. Haven't really gotten a chance to play any games recently, but the E01 made me quite curious about their gaming performance. After a few miserable games of Valorant, I think the E01 has potential to be a good gaming IEM, as the enemy and teammates' steps are quite pronounced. The sound of gunfire is also quite pronounced. I think the combination of the two works wonders, determining the position of enemies and shots fired. Yeah, I cannot say much about gaming reviews other than that. I watched the ending of Arcane Season 2 with the Soratune E01, and I got some notes from this experience. While the tonality of the E01 works well with watching a serial like this, I think what is maybe slightly lacking is the clarity of positioning, especially in the center channel. But at the end of the day, the E01 performs spectacularly. Perhaps I changed the track for this one, as I am quite fatigued from listening to distortion on many IEMs. Maybe it will come back soon? I digress. On Megitsune, the E01 performs as expected from the things mentioned: tight, punchy kick drums, and slightly light-ish body to vocals. As for the soundstage is quite wide and deep. Perhaps it is due to the semi-open back design of the E01. The imaging is pretty good for the price. The vocals do take center stage. Perhaps the layering could be better and the mentioned center channel could be better, but at this price range, I think it is acceptable. The Zero Red is definitely my favorite IEM. Maybe it is just that the Zero Red is somewhat a sentimental piece that I own. I digress. The Zero Red is perhaps my favorite IEM, and truth be told, I am quite satisfied with the performance of the Zero Red to this day. Even after trying and reviewing higher-end IEMs, I find the Zero Red enough, even with all the things lacking with them. Compared to the Zero Red, the E01's vocals are slightly lighter bodied and can be a little bit forward. The Zero Red also has slightly less bass, and the kick drums are not as pronounced as the E01. The vocals took center stage with the E01 and relatively close to you, but on the Zero Red, it is quite a little bit further. Overall, for my taste and $15 more, I think the E01 is an upgrade. The extra bass, extra clarity, and extra detail retrieval is quite nice. The E01 is a dual Dynamic Driver IEM from a rather new brand, Soratune. Costing around $70 to $79, the E01 is a great first IEM from Soratune. If I have to summarize the whole review and you are like me who likes the Truthear Zero Red, I think the E01 might be an upgrade over them. Or at least it is way more suitable to my preference. The sound signature is slightly warmish, but not so warm that you start losing clarity on the top end. The bass is also quite pronounced, giving that sense of nice, fun, and accurate bass. Perhaps the downside of the E01 is the cable, as I find them quite uncomfortable on my hands. Oh, and perhaps the layering could be better. But at this price range, I think it is just a nitpick on my end.
About the comparison of the E01 to the Ignite X Beast, I think it is unfair to compare the two, as turns out that the E01 is twice the price of the Ignite X Beast. Lucky that I haven't finished this review when I went to PAPI in Jakarta this weekend. I think the E01 could benefit a lot more if it has the 4.4 termination option.
As for the ratings, the E01 gets an A- for tonality and a B+ plus 4 technicalities. Is it worth a try? I think yes, they are definitely worth a try. That is it. That is my review of the E01. Have you tried them? What are your thoughts on them? Or if you want to talk, leave me a comment down below. Thank you all for watching. Thank you Soratune for providing the unit info review. Have a great day.